Hello and welcome to Faffing with Friends. Today, we're introducing a new segment. On this part of the show, we're gonna be putting something under a very close lens, and we're gonna be deeply diving into the depths of some of our favorite things, some of our favorite mediums, and frankly, we're just gonna be talking with no actual commitments and no actual restraints on anything we say, which is pretty much what we've been doing so far, but...
Also, very, very little research beforehand, so if
yeah,
you say stupid shit...
it's just us gathered together.
If you try to fact check me, I will fight you in the comments.
Yeah,
don't do that.
These episodes, if you want to pick a bone with us for these episodes, you've missed the point. You know, we're just chatting shit. And yeah, so without further ado, today's topic is a film which we've mentioned many, many times on this podcast. It's part of the Faffing lore, you know, it's part of Faffing lore. And that is the 2019 film, The Lighthouse.
Which, guess what, is Lawrence's favorite film of that entire year.
Fair play, and as Lawrence's favorite film, I'm gonna let him start, because the order that we watched this was he watched it first, then he bullied me to watching it, and then me and him bullied Joe to watch it. So, with that being said...
Let me tell you a story, young lad.
Go on, go on.
A long time ago, back when this horrible virus began its terrible reign of terror.
Please stop.
A good boy by the name of Lawrence, a pure laddie. He was sitting at home looking for something to watch, and he ended up watching The Lighthouse. And for the next few months, he made sure to evangelize the name of this film in all the group chats he hadn't been kicked out of yet for being an annoying twat. And after a few months, well, these fucking idiots who do the podcast with me decided, you know what, Lawrence has some good points. He has good taste. Maybe we should watch this crazy film that he keeps telling us mad things about that he knows we're going to enjoy because he's got such a patrician taste in media. So, The Lighthouse. It is a trippy film in black and white, all filmed on one location, starring only two actors, and those actors are Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. Which anyone who's followed the career of either of these actors will know that they're amazing. Yes, Robert Pattinson had the start that we always mock, which is Twilight, which everyone makes fun of because for good reasons. But ever since Twilight, every single film he's been in is honestly incredible. He was in Good Times, I think it's called, if anyone's seen it.
The Safdie Brothers film, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Incredible performance. That's when I was like, I'm actually sold on Robert Pattinson. I want to see everything else he's making. And then The Lighthouse comes out and it's one of my favorite films ever. Like, honestly, it has such deep atmosphere that because of where it's set, because it's so wet and the air's heavy, you can almost feel it while you watch it because of how good the sound design and the visuals of the black and white are. Because it's filmed with like an old-fashioned lens, right? Yeah. So anytime you have light actually being visible, it has to be incredibly strong because otherwise it doesn't pick up on those lenses. So whenever they're sitting at the table, for example, at night talking, I've looked into the behind the scenes. The light was so bright that neither of them could actually see in front of them. So they're just having to gauge where the other is at around this table and just talk at them and act. And that's just so cool. It's so genuine. There's they were really like dealing with some horrible weather conditions. If you look at the behind the scenes, you see Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson just getting sprayed by water as the like waves hit. It's always rainy and disgusting and wet. And it translates so well into creating this really genuine, like terrible, cold atmosphere. And every now and then the air horn from the lighthouse, that's supposed to ward ships that they're getting close, will just go off. And it's a continuous thing throughout the whole film. And it just helps build this really tense atmosphere because you always know that air horn is going to go off again. It's going to be like, that horrible noise in the distance. It's so eerie. It's so horror, but in a very specific psychological sense where you're just seeing these two men almost lose their minds because of isolation, which again, very apt topic for the pandemic. Yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, they certainly do lose their minds. Go on, Joe.
Well, okay, so it's also my favorite film of basically this new decade. I mean, obviously, barely anything came out in 2020, so it's, but even though a lot of films, didn't come out, I still think even if they had come out, The Lighthouse would have won it for me. I think what The Lighthouse could also even achieve is making a new genre, inventing a new genre of movies that will be filmed in this way, where it's just maybe one or two actors in one location. Maybe perhaps even sometimes black and white, but it's not necessary. With just an amazing script, an amazing performance. Like, I was wowed. I mean, it's a shame that I took so long to actually watch this. And it actually took a whole pandemic to convince me to watch this, because I probably wouldn't have watched it for any other reason. But what I love about this, other than the fact that, it's part adaptation of the Promethean myth, it's part adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's The Lighthouse, and stuff like that, it's very symbolic and it's very metaphor-rich. Like, almost all of the stuff that happens, like, spoiler alert, the stuff with the seagull, the stuff with the mermaid, the stuff with the lobster cage, even when they find those gin bottles buried beneath the lighthouse and stuff like that, the burial at the end, the storm, all of this, and obviously the light and the siren, it is so well done, it is so well put together, it's just so seamless and just beautiful. It's a spectacle, it really is a spectacle, and not just the visuals of it, but also the performance of it. Like you guys said, Robin Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, like, again, Robin Pattinson obviously also started out in Harry Potter, so he had like a very gimmicky and clownish start in acting, to say the least. But Willem Dafoe, my goodness, he's been in almost everything that you could probably think of. Like,
and even when he's in a bad film or playing a role that's like super cheesy or bad, he does such a 100% job at it that he's always the most memorable part of those like films or roles. Like, everyone knows the Green Goblin in the original Spider-Man. Yes, the one made in the Raimi trilogy. His Green Goblin is iconic. Everyone knows his Green Goblin, Every single time he goes, Spider-Man!
Yeah.
It's like, yes.
After The Lighthouse and the Green Goblin, I'm actually going to drop a very hot take. If any men of culture out there have watched The Boondock Saints, you know what I'm talking about, because the infamous, there was a firefight! It's just, that scene is a scene on crack. It's such a shit film, but like, it's iconic for a reason.
It's a cult classic.
For everyone saying that, The Lighthouse is all of these things and more. The nerdy English master that I am is gonna come out and say that everything is a metaphor or an allegory for something else. There's tons of stories intertwined. You guys mentioned Prometheus and The Lighthouse by Poe, but actually I find it very similar to the writings of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, especially with the seagull taking the, and obviously I'm talking about The Ram of the Ancient Mariner.
Yeah.
The seagull obviously takes the role of the albatross that the mariner shoots down, kills, and he brings this godly divine wrath on top of the ship and on top of the lighthouse in this case, and he pays for it with torturing and pain.
We see a lot of the sailor mythology and like the sea myths and stuff being interweaved into this film. And again, because we're language nerds as well, for those who didn't know, the two actors in the film, I believe Defoe at least especially, had a dialect coach to be able to learn to talk the way they do. So the reason like his great hark, damn thee, Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow speech, the reason it's so good and it's so consistent and continuous and it hits you like a wall, is because who knows how long Defoe, trained with his dialect coach to be able to mimic this really old-timey sailor dialect, which just adds such texture to the film. The way they both talk, you almost think to yourself, I've never heard either of these actors ever do this much of a different take with the way they're speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to give credit to Robert Pattinson as well, because everyone's been clowning on him for Twilight, but those days are long gone. And in my opinion, his current work actually makes Twilight better, because I go watch Twilight now and I'm like, ha, you're going to be a great star someday.
Yeah.
But, to mention, I really get insane Daniel Day-Lewis from him vibes. Like,
I feel like he's slowly going down that route of just becoming the character that does really like intense, crazy work.
Of course, and I very much hope that he will get his recognition as both Batman in the mainstream and as by the Academy.
See, that's the thing. This film is the reason I was excited when I heard he was going to be the new Batman, because I'm like, I've seen what he can do. I'm so up for seeing what the hell is he going to do with, the Batman role. Is he actually going to make Batman a bit more interesting, because we've had a lot of good Batmans, but one of the problems is in Batman, almost always in the films, the villain in the really good ones has been way more interesting than anyone playing Batman.
Yeah.
And that's an issue that just seems to continue. Like now we have, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and he's way more interesting as a character and three-dimensional than, say Christian Bale's Batman was for a lot of the Nolan trilogy. And again, Heath Ledger had the, more interesting character in The Dark Knight. But I want to see if Robert Pattinson
can finally add that edge.
Yeah, because like Batman is so much more interesting than we usually get if you actually read some of the material.
I think people have been relying on his rogue gallery for so long. Like I think it's been
absolutely for the films especially.
Back to the Lighthouse. Robert Pattinson also fucks a mermaid, and you have a very cool close up of mermaid's labia. So that's pretty.
That was such a weird scene. I did not know how.
Well, obviously it was. That's the whole point.
Obviously, of course, it was the whole point. But my brain, because I was lying in my bed, it was midday. It was quiet for some reason. It was a strange day where my family were just extra quiet, and I could enjoy the movie. And I was watching this movie on my tablet, and suddenly there's just this like mermaid genitalia in my face. I think the first time I've ever seen like an adaptation or like a representation of what a mermaid genitalia
it
looks
answered a great question that men have had for millennia. How does the mermaid have sex?
Right. And I was like, hold on a minute here. Am I supposed to be creeped out? Am I supposed to be turned on? What am I supposed to feel here? Am I supposed to be grossed out? What is going on?
That whole scene was insane because it all starts with I laughed my head off because Robert Pattinson's character, I believe, was Winslow. Yeah, Winslow. He's like on the edge of like his nerves, about to break, and he has like these two pots of like shit, and he's obviously going to jump him off. He's gonna throw him off the cliff, and he goes to throw him off the cliff, and they just smash it in his face. And it's just the next thing you see is him hallucinating fucking a mermaid. So I'm like, I can pinpoint exactly the moments where your heart broke. It's just, it's like when your day has been so worse and then you just like, shit just goes in your face,
I will say, one of the reasons I was so excited to see The Lighthouse, while I was the one in the group that was like really paying attention for it, is I've seen Egger's previous film, which was
The Witch.
The Witch, or Witch, really. And that film is also just dripping with atmosphere. It's one of those films where it's like the way it's shot, the locale, everything. It's very similar to The Lighthouse in that concept of it's shot in a very like tight locale where you get really familiar with the zone almost. And it just has so much atmosphere. I don't know how he does it, but the way he films his films, you can feel the weather. You can feel the like, I don't know how to explain it. Like when I was watching The Lighthouse, I felt cold. And I could feel like the sea breeze almost, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I was in my room with like the blinds pulled down and the windows closed, but I could still feel every time the film emphasized the coldness and the storminess, I could feel colder and in my room. And that's something very few pieces of media get right in every way, the way these films do, where it's like the sound design is working towards that end, the visuals are working towards that end, everything's working so well together to create an atmosphere that's unforgettable when you watch.
And part of that atmosphere is what I've noticed is obviously it's not like a CGI heavy, very colorized, saturated movie that, for example, Endgame was or whatever. So that might be one way in which a lot of people might be turned off from watching, a modern day black and white movie. What the heck? But I love the way that it set the atmosphere. What I wanted to mention, Ivaylo, about a dark comedy that you talked about. That scene of him with his face being covered in dung, it reminded me of the scene in The Big Lebowski when they go to scatter Donnie's ashes.
Donnie's ashes.
Blows back into their faces.
And they fly right back in their face.
Disgusting. It's absolutely similar to that, yeah. What else? I also wanted to mention how... I also want to talk about the characters, I feel like the relationship between, obviously, Defoe and Pattinson as actors is there, but also the chemistry
Well, before you go into that, I mean, obviously, whoever's listening to this has either watched the movie or is happy for the movie to be spoiled, right? So do you want to give like a...
If you haven't figured out that we're spoiling the film yet, what are you doing?
Yeah,
right.
But watch The Lighthouse,
so do you want to like give a quick plot synopsis of the movie?
Okay, so we have two characters, a very grizzled old sailor man that is the previous keeper and has been keeper clearly of this lighthouse for ages, and the new replacement second keeper who's coming in, an Ephraim Winslow.
Ephraim Winslow.
Now,
Yeah.
Ephraim Winslow. Now, at first, you get the idea that, they're going to be stuck here for a while. They get left off by the ship that brings them in, and they're just on the lighthouse, And this is how it used to be for lighthouse keepers. You'd have two, usually, to make sure everything runs smoothly. And if one gets hurt, to have someone else to be able to call for help or do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that this kind of job, historically, they're going to be there a while. And what we see is just these two characters, through a bunch of unforeseen consequences, remain stuck on this island way longer than they should.
Yeah.
So, there's a horrible continuous storm that seems to last forever, which is, almost cosmic horror in the state that you stop, being able to track time in the film, and they can't even tell how many weeks or days they've been there.
They get stuck on the island because the storm happens, but the storm happens because Ephraim Winslow, being the wonderful human being he is, kills a seagull,
Yes.
which is bad luck for sailors, and he gets told that repeatedly by his elder and superior.
It being a trippy, surrealist, fever dream, that could be why it happens, or it could just be humankind doing that thing where bad thing has happened. It must be because of this bad omen we've caused.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So the entire film from there becomes watching these two men lose their mind and lose their trust in one another and start becoming more and more almost animal-like in the way they behave and the way they talk and the way they interact. And, slowly and slowly you see them go crazy and you see them go just full-on psychopaths and just try and kill each other by the end.
Oh, yeah.
And it's fascinating seeing how slowly things fall apart, how they're putting up with the routine and the mundane, horrible, manual labor they have to keep doing for ages and ages. Yeah. And they're putting up with these, really annoying character quirks each one has to the other. There's obviously a lot deeper plot points, like how Ephraim Winslow isn't actually, his real identity, and he murdered someone, and he's at the lighthouse to get away from his past, and how Thomas Wake, the Willem Dafoe character, has actually been writing in a diary and shit-talking him the whole film and being like, the moment we get out of here, I'm going to make sure he gets fired and doesn't get paid, which is kind of what sets off Robert Pattinson's character to finally snap and go murder him.
Yeah, I think there's a very deep undertone between their relationship, which can be, again, it can be linked to classical literature in a very kind of mythical way. So the thing is, right? So Robert's character Ephraim he's tasked with doing all the manual labor during the day, and you see him do it. He's tolling. He's a hard-working man. Obviously, he has his demons in the past, but in terms of his relationship with Thomas Wake, he's doing everything he's told. Now, Thomas is working the night shifts, and the night shift involves him just keeping watch of the lights inside the lighthouse. And he absolutely makes sure Ephraim Winslow never makes it to the light. And that light sort of becomes this kind of mythological kind of energy of sorts that Ephraim is forever banned from entering. It's like Thomas Wake...
The forbidden fruit. It's like knowledge. Yeah.
And Thomas Wake is the guardian preventing him from doing that. He's always going to be there, and he's never going to get his chance in the lights. And Wake, on the other hand, is in some sort of very perverse, disgusting relationship with the light. I don't know what that exactly means.
Yeah, he keeps it all to himself, and there's not even the implication. There's just the flat out him masturbating to the light.
Yeah, it's quite. It's not even subtle. It's pretty on the nose.
And it's just kind of hilarious what happens to Winslow when he sees that and hits him in the face.
Winslow goes.
You're like, oh no.
Winslow goes up to the lighthouse and from just the top, just he just sees some sticky stuff dripping through the holes. But, we move. But no, the most classical allegory I can link is obviously the fact that Winslow can be he's your Prometheus or he's your Lucifer. He's the figure that's been cast away.
He wants to steal the knowledge.
He has been
from
cast
the
away, and he wants to return and he wants to steal the knowledge. And he manages to reach it eventually, but by the end of the film, he gets punished for it again. Because,
just like the story. You take the forbidden fruit and you get punished for it because you weren't actually supposed to.
Just like Prometheus was chained up and eaten by a hawk. Same thing happens to Winslow. He gets eaten by seagulls.
But in this case, seagulls, because he killed a seagull. I really do. I love the like we talked about, all of the acting, the atmosphere, and all this. What I really love, and what I don't think gets enough talking about, because it's filmed with like a legitimate lens, the kind they used to do in black and white films, you get a lot more detail to the image, even though it's a smaller ratio. And what that means is their expressions are way more impactful, and they're way more like drawn out and easy to read. So a lot of the film, when they're not talking to each other and it's just quiet, you get a lot by just watching their faces. And because of the lens, their faces are they stand out so much. There's such a good contrast to the colors around them that, on black and white footage, that literally you can see every single crease in their skin. You can see every little pore. And it just makes their acting stand out in a way that maybe it wouldn't have if it wasn't filmed in such a peculiar but specific way. And I really like that. I really like the effect that has.
Indeed. The Lighthouse was nominated for Best Cinematography at the Academy Awards. Didn't win. It was the only award that was nominated for, which is a big snub in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I've said this before. This film not getting multiple Oscars pretty much reinforces the fact that the Oscars are trash and no one should ever watch that award ceremony.
Which recently got confirmed for us because of what happened with the placement of the Best Actor award.
Yeah, they baited it. We'll talk about that another time, but they baited people with a stupid bullcrap, and they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing, but
they knew what they were doing.
What are you gonna do? Hollywood's gonna be Hollywood.
You're gonna steal the light and burn them.
What I wanted to mention about the characters was, now this might be a bit thin and really just contrived of me to say.
That's why we're talking about the film. Contrived, thin,
Let loose, isn't it?
Right, so I think it's significant that they're both called Thomas, and that name in particular.
Oh, yeah.
So immediately what comes to my mind is doubting Thomas. And they do both doubt one another. And take doubt and, use the synonym of skeptical, I think, would be more accurate, especially for Winslow, right? I'm going to call him Winslow, even though that's not his real name, because it's just easier to differentiate, right?
So, because, you can't just be like, Thomas and Thomas. Well, I hope the audience has an easy time following that.
Right, exactly. So, Winslow, he starts growing suspicion about Thomas, the elder Thomas.
The old Thomas.
Exactly. And he really, he builds up his own mythology in his mind of what the lighthouse could be and what could be stored in there, right? And it encourages him more and more to go and eventually explore what is there. And obviously, in my mind, everything else that factors into it, like their relationship and the storm and how everything breaks down at that point, encourages him, because of his skepticism, because of his innate character that comes from his name, encourages him to do everything that is done and eventually go up to the lighthouse and have that moment of, that moment we see that he just sort of looks at the light and loses his mind.
Yeah, he's just losing it. It cuts to almost complete brightness and you just don't know what's happening.
It really reinforces that whole idea that humanity is simply unable to, and Joe can back me up on this, but the idea of a god, God's form is so powerful and absolute that we can't comprehend it.
That was a very I showed myself to a mountain and the mountain disappeared sort of moment.
Yeah, it's just God just destroyed me because I'm not ready to handle him.
That's, I think, one of the reasons a lot of people, other than the very sea creature Cthulhu visionary stuff that you see in the film, one of the things that makes people think, this is in a way a cosmic horror, is that when he finally gets to the light and witnesses it, he literally can't handle it. He breaks, he goes mad, and the next thing we see, it's him being eaten by the seagulls. And it's like, oh God, what did he see in the light, right? What could he have possibly gazed upon that broke him like that?
Yeah. It's a very incredible film. It's a very incredible journey, and again, all literary allegories aside, I do want to say one more thing. One of my favorite things about this film is that obviously Ephraim Winslow is a murderer. The fact that he's ran and he's escaped to this most desolate corner in the world, hoping that this is the one place where he is safe, and that one place of refuge ends up being his worst nightmare.
He pretty much ends up going to hell as punishment for his crime. Yeah. That's another thing I was going to mention. You went right to it. There's no good character in this film. They're both pieces of shit, and I love that. Because you're not watching it rooting for one or the other. You're literally just you two are insufferable, and if I had to be either of you dealing with the other, I'd probably end up trying to kill him too.
Yeah, it seems like the only just character in the movie is actually the weather.
Yeah, pretty much. Making sure neither of them leave there alive.
Your God and your savior, he is the thing. And, the fact that Winslow just stumbles out from the lighthouse is very reminiscent of, obviously, again, Lucifer being cast out from heaven.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it's very Old Testament-y as well, and Joe can back me
Very.
up on that. I don't want to say that, like, the lighthouse
No, you're
is
right.
kind of like the Old Testament version of God.
I mean,
but, like,
there's so
you know,
much spiritual allegory
There
in
is
it. You
very
could
much,
argue it's like
yeah.
a lot of mythical stories and like religious
Yes.
stories in
Yes.
one.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have anything else to say, or are we done with this deep, close...
I want to talk about the hilarious comparisons that have been made with the Lighthouse and the memes that came from
Oh, yes,
the
please.
Lighthouse.
I mean,
Right?
we all know that the memes are top tier. I mean, you're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
You can
Ivaylo?
literally replace it with anything.
Yep, and it is
Fun that they
hilarious.
cook, ain't ya?
Well, I mean, the most symbolic thing in the movie is the lighthouse, which is literally a phallus, right?
Yeah.
And there was something that Eggers cut out from the movie, which was he wanted to transition from a shot of the lighthouse
Uh-huh.
to Robert Pattinson's penis.
Thank God we didn't. Anyways.
But the producer said, maybe we should cut this out so
Yeah.
more
I mean,
audiences
yeah,
can
that would have
experience
made
it.
it even harder to convince other people to sit the fuck down and watch this film.
My favorite Lighthouse memes are actually the reviews, which some of them being completely genuine. Someone literally said, I paid $20 for this film and it's black and white. How do I turn the sound on? Like, how do I switch the color? You know?
I mean, see, this is a very Justice League scenario with me, because when I tried to watch the extended Snyder cut, I thought I got the wrong version or something when it started playing. The wrong
Watch the Snyder cut,
aspect
you
ratio.
bastard.
I refuse. Okay.
There was also a video, if I'm not wrong, I believe, of Flapjack that Lawrence shared with me.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
Anyone
hilarious.
who knows Knowledge Hub on YouTube, he also has Alternate History Hub. Those are his two channels. His main channel just does really trippy, fucking weird videos these days. But he did one where he equated the Adventures of Flapjack, which is a show I loved when I was younger.
To be fair,
To the
Flapjack
Lighthouse?
is pretty trippy as well.
And it's such an amazing, like the way he overlays the characters from the Lighthouse
It is.
onto Flapjack and the Captain. It's amazing.
Flapjack was a creepy show, bro. Don't tell me it wasn't.
Oh yeah, Flapjack is one of those shows on like the level of Courage.
Yeah, very
Where it's like that
surrealist.
kind of show.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, incredible stuff. But yeah, final words. Watch The Lighthouse if you haven't, and if you're listening to this and you still haven't watched The Lighthouse, what are you doing? But yeah, man, this has been my new experiment, our new segments we've been running, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we're probably going to be doing these more in the future. Not very often, but
Also, to those that haven't watched The Lighthouse, after I literally gave it the greatest recommend of all time in like our movie episode, all I have to say to you is, hark, Triton! Hark!
There you have it. There you have it.
I hope our audience doubly appreciates what Lawrence did, because he's been coughing a lot recently, and that's going to mess up his voice box even more. So I'm grateful that he
Also,
did that.
don't worry, it's not COVID, it's acid.
Yep.
I'm dying from something completely different.
Yep, as per our previous episode, or on the food episode. Anyway, I think I really enjoyed this segment. I'm glad that Ivaylo came up with the idea. And if you guys enjoyed it, we'll do this more often. It will just be a very in-depth, instead of what we usually do, which is we just choose one topic and we...
I mean, as in-depth as you can in half an hour.
Yeah,
Exactly,
we're just chatting
exactly.
shit, man. There's no
Right.
expectation of us anyway. Just like,
Right,
do what
right,
we want to do.
Right, right. So instead of just jumping every 5 minutes from one movie topic or whatever to another, we're going to, from now on, hopefully in these segments, which we'll have every one or two every season, we'll have, on different topics and subjects. And sometimes we'll even have a poll and ask you guys what you want us to do for the next episode. So, but in the meantime, please go and check out our social media. So again, as always, if it's not already on the screen, I'll mention it. Find us at Faffing Friends on pretty much any social media. We're unavoidable. And like us, comment,
We
share.
are inevitable.
Absolutely. Subscribe, share it to
Cousin
your friends and
Randy.
family. Give it to
Cousin
Cousin
Randy.
Randy, your sixth cousin, 25 times removed. And I'm sure he'll spread it throughout the world like wildfire. Now,
Right.
so hope you enjoyed this episode. I've been Joe.
This has been Ivaylo. Have a good one.
And the greatest host there is, Lawrence. Bye.
Watch The
Bye.
Lighthouse. Bye.
Do it.